स्वागत है। सारा देश अपनी आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है और अब हम अमृत काल में प्रवेश कर गए। इस अवसर पर स्वाधीनता संग्राम और प्रवासी अध्ययन केंद्र इग्नू द्वारा आयोजित इस विशेष व्याख्यान श्रृंखला में आप सबका मैं बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूं। आज हम अपनी 72वीं पायदान पर खड़े हैं। हमने यह निश्चित किया था कि हम 75 व्याख्यान आयोजित करेंगे और मुझे यह बताते हुए अत्यंत प्रसन्नता हो रही है कि हम शीघ्र ही उस 75वें व्याख्यान को भी पूरा करने वाले हैं। आज हमारा परम सौभाग्य है कि मुख्य अतिथि के रूप में आदरणीय प्रोफेसर शीला राय जी हमारे साथ हैं और वो भारत के संविधान पर गांधी जी के विचारों का प्रभाव, गांधीयन इम्पैक्ट ऑन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया विषय पर अपनी बात रखेंगी और हम सब उससे लाभान्वित होंगे। मैं आज के स्वागत एवं मुख्य अतिथि के परिचय के लिए अर्थशास्त्र विभाग मानविकी विद्यापीठ की सह आचार्य डॉक्टर विजेता बनवारी जी को आमंत्रित करता हूं।
ये सुशील, आप एक चीज भूल गए, कुलगीत।
सॉरी सर, पहली बार हुआ। हाँ, तो हम लोग अपने कार्यक्रम का आरंभ कुलगीत से करते हैं। तो सबसे पहले मैं संजय जी से अनुरोध करता हूं कि वो कुलगीत द्वारा कार्यक्रम आरंभ करें।
ये है जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, ये है जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, सरल सुगम शिक्षा का आलय। जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय। ज्योत जलाए ज्ञान की, स्वाध्याय की, अनुसंधान की राह दिखाए वंचितों को, शिक्षा के अधिकार की। ना उम्र का कोई बंधन, ना बंदिश परिधि की, घर घर है बना शिक्षा का देवालय। ये जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय। जन जन का मान है, सम्मान है, पहचान है। जन जन का मान, सम्मान, पहचान है। राष्ट्र का मान है, अभिमान है, अभिमान है। राष्ट्र का मान, वरदान, अभिमान है। सर्वसुलभ सर्वोत्तम शिक्षा का है वाला, मुक्त और दूरस्थ शिक्षा का महान। ये जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय। देश विदेश पटल पर भूषित, नवाचार से सज्जित, गुणवत्ता से परिपूरित। ज्ञान वाणी, ज्ञान दर्शन, ज्ञान कोश से संचित, ज्ञान कोश से संचित। सर्वगुण संपन्न शिक्षा का हिमालय, शिक्षा का हिमालय। यह जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद संजय जी। अब मैं अर्थशास्त्र विभाग की सह आचार्य डॉक्टर विजेता बनवारी जी को आज के स्वागत वक्तव्य और मुख्य अतिथि के परिचय के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं।
धन्यवाद डॉक्टर सुशील जी। गुड आफ्टरनून एवरीवन। I welcome our esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Sheela Rai, Professor of Political Science, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, who has kindly accepted our invitation to deliver today's lecture. I also welcome respected Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Satyakam Sir, who is also Director of Center for Freedom Struggle and Diaspora Studies. I also extend warm welcome to all the colleagues at the Regional Center as well as at the headquarters, all our learners and viewers. As Sushil ji just told us, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is an initiative of Government of India to celebrate and commemorate 75 years of independence. On the same line, IGNOU is also organizing 75 lectures, and today we are on 72nd step. And we have today's lecture on a very extremely interesting topic, Gandhian impact on the Constitution of India. And to deliver this important lecture, we have a very eminent speaker today. And I have a pleasant task of introducing our keynote speaker to everyone. Professor Sheila Rai, Professor of Political Science, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. She has a rich teaching experience of 33 years. She holds various important positions of responsibility. Just to name a few, she's chairperson of India Policy Foundation. She's president of Indian Society of Gandhian Studies, General Secretary of Rajasthan Political Science Association, General Secretary, Rashtriya Samaj Vigyan Parishad, and many more. She has contributed various research papers and books at national and international level. She has supervised 36 PhD students and guided more than 95 MPhil and MA dissertations. She has organized several international, national, regional conferences, seminars, workshops, etc., and presented research extensively on national, international forums held in various parts of India and various foreign countries. She has also served as faculty for foreign universities and also as chair, resource person, panelist, keynote speaker in various national and international conferences, seminars, refresher courses, etc. She has also contributed as expert in various public service commissions and audio-visual video forums. Madam, we are extremely delighted to have you here, and we are waiting for you to enlighten us on Gandhian impact on the Constitution of India. Without taking much of the time, I would like to invite you to address all of us. Ma'am, you have to unmute.
Thank you, Vijeta, for the generous introduction. And Namaskar, Satyakamji, and all those who have joined here. Let me congratulate you at the outset that you all are doing something really admirable. This is the 72nd and of the series that you all have been conducting. So I must say that I'm fortunate that I'm being also part of this. And now you can understand why we as proud Indians need to actually celebrate this Amrit Mahotsav. If we can, accomplish a feat like this and making all the requisite efforts, then I don't see why we will not become a 5 trillion economy and then go on to a 3 trillion economy, which the government is aiming for. So let me begin on this positive note that today we are celebrating, the 75th years of independence. And what better could we have than to say that, well, not only have we outbeaten the country which used to say that the sun never sets there, we have become the fifth largest economy. And whom have we beaten? None other than those who have colonized us. So this is one victory of ours. And leave alone that, maybe we should celebrate also how a person of Indian origin is now serving as Prime Minister of that country. That speaks volumes for what Indians are. Now, to come to the main Amrit Mahotsav, when the Prime Minister also made his statement, he, amongst other things, what he said was that we are proud of our Constitution. And friends, we have to be proud of our Constitution. Enough of self-flagellation. Enough of self-criticism. It is a time to pat our backs and say that, well, we Indians have fared fairly well. Maybe we haven't accomplished the ideal situation, the ideal conditions, but the journey so far is something which would be definitely enviable for many others. Now, if you look at our neighborhood especially, the kind of instability in the neighborhood, name the country, begin from Afghanistan or Nepal or Sri Lanka or Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, name all the countries that you can, and you will see vis-a-vis India, the instability, the turmoil, the turbulence in these countries actually put us in contradistinction to them and make us one of the countries which can claim to be the most stable. And why have we been stable? Why have we been able to conduct ourselves the way we have? Because we have had a wonderful constitution. And this wonderful constitution of ours, remember when I'm a student of political science. Of course, I did my PhD in Gandhian philosophy, but as a student of political science, which is my major discipline, in that we have always been reading of books of Granville Austin or Ivor Jennings, or for that matter, D.D. Basu, or all of them do claim that the Constitution of India, and leave alone only them, even the politicians of different hues and colors, they also claim that the Constitution of India is a bag of borrowings. We borrowed the directive principles from Ireland, we borrowed the parliamentary system from Britain, we borrowed the federal system from the US, and we borrowed so many features from the Canadian Constitution, meaning thereby to say that, oh, there's nothing unique, there's nothing original in the Indian Constitution, in the Constitution of India, and it is more or less a borrowings. We have borrowed certain institutional mechanisms, maybe, and yes, rightly so, but the indigenous spirit and the indigenous content of our Constitution is remarkable. And it is because of that remarkable spirit of indigeneity that our Constitution has been able to function the way it has, unlike most of the other countries in our neighborhood. If we look at it, we talk of, and we have to give him his credit, the father of the Constitution, who framed the Constitution, chairman of the drafting committee, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar ji. We shall always remain indebted to his contribution in devising and leading the entire Constituent Assembly in framing a constitution which has stood us in the stead of time. But we also talk very highly, and we should be talking very highly of all the Constituent Assembly members who sat there for 2 years, 11 months and 17 days to frame the Constitution. After 1787, when after the Philadelphia Convention, where the United States America Constitution was framed, there has never been such a long marathon exercise to create a constitution. Very surprisingly, in that constitution, in that Constituent Assembly, we have political leaders whose contribution has been immense, who sat there and discussed, deliberated, and there were all kinds of debates and discussions. And this is the only constitution which came up, which was finally readied and put into practice on the basis of accommodation and consensus. Without consensus, we did not agree to incorporate anything into the constitution which did not have, if not unanimity, at least there has to be consensus. And amongst all those who sat there from different shades of political ideologies, there was one person missing in person there, and he was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who was never in person a part of the constitution making and in the Constituent Assembly. But if we actually go through our constitution, try to analyze how it has functioned and how it has been constituted, the different provisions there, the underlying spirit of the constitution, I feel, and this is my personal view, which has been also been voiced by many other luminaries of amongst the constitutional experts, that the most reverberating spirit and resonance of any voice that we can find is Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi did not come there. Gandhiji was not there in the Constituent Assembly, but let us remember, friends, that in 1922 itself, when he first pronounced that Swaraj could not be the gift of the British to India, of the British Parliament to India, but must spring from the people of India, expressed through freely elected representatives. He announced this in 1922 itself, that this is not going to be a free gift from the Parliament or British Parliament. It has to be devised by, it has to be constituted by the people of India through their freely elected representatives. And see, after 24 years, we actually saw the day when such a constituent assembly was constituted. Maybe not the way we would ideally have wanted each one to be freely elected representative, but yes, there were some members who were not elected in that manner. Provincial legislatures elected their members, but nonetheless, the Constituent Assembly did represent the Indian people and the Indian people's wishes and aspirations and desires. So amongst other than that, well, while they were framing the Constitution of India, when they were deciding to form the Constituent Assembly, I do not know how many of you know about it, but there have been people who have been talking about it very recently, that they were considering to invite Professor Ivor Jennings, Dr. Ivor Jennings, as a constitutional expert to give leadership and advice in framing the Constitution. When Mahatma Gandhi came to know of it, he said, why do we have to call a foreigner for that? He maybe, I do not in any way take away from his constitutional expertise, but we have our own indigenous legal expert. And B.R. Ambedkar, who was a very strong critic of, uncompromising critic of Mahatma Gandhi, yet Gandhiji, for the well-being of the country, for the great acumen that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had acquired, respected him for it and found that he would be a better person than Ivor Jennings to actually guide us through that constitution-making process. And therefore, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was taken into the Constituent Assembly, and his role definitely has been something that we have all been very appreciative of, very indebted to, and shall always remain indebted, because had he not been at the helm of affairs, probably we would have had not the kind of constitution that we are celebrating today. So if we see whether Mahatma Gandhi, he came in, he tried to give his support. But if you look at him, did he ever visit the Constituent Assembly while it was functioning? In fact, it is rather surprising that in 1934 itself, he retired from the Congress. And he realized that the leaders of the Congress were not in consonance with the ideas and ideals that he was taking forward. And he realized that he was becoming a misfit there. And he also realized that he had a lot to contribute through his constructive program in the country. And so, despite not being part of the Constituent Assembly, not being a part of the active Congress, he was very active in the politics and leadership, and he was an active leader of the country. And whatever he voiced, whether it was through his written words or whatever he expressed through his written word, through his speeches, through his different kind of memoranda, etc., whatever he had contributed, those views were for the benefit of the country and the people, for humanity at large. And these were taken into cognizance, whether it was the Hind Swaraj or his newspapers or Harijan, Young India, letters that he wrote to the different dignitaries, etc., and personal, all those were taken into account. But we have to remember that when the Roundtable Conference, which was organized in the 30s, 1931, Gandhi was, because remember I told you in 34 he left the Congress. When he went to the Roundtable Conference, he was the sole representative of Congress at that point of time. And when he went to the Roundtable Conference there, he was the person who said, he voiced his opinion. And if you remember, there was a design in organizing that Roundtable Conference where they were trying to create fissures between the Indian populace on the lines of religion, on the lines of caste. And this is where Gandhi played a pivotal role in trying to overcome those barriers, in trying to bridge those gaps, create bridges between the Indians, and that is how that is history. How the McDonald Pact, how McDonald announced the Prime Minister of the country announced the communal award, and Gandhi sat on his fast unto death, and he said, "I will not let it happen," because he said, after all, are the untouchables going to remain untouchables in perpetuity? क्या ये सदैव रहेंगे ऐसा? ऐसा नहीं होगा. इसलिए we have, and we cannot create more fissures. Meaning to say that in 1931, in that roundtable conference also, during that conference, he made his voice very clear that we need to have a constituent assembly, and that constituent assembly has to frame our constitution. And if this is not taken into cognizance by the British, I am willing to adopt direct action for that. Nothing short of a constituent assembly was acceptable to Gandhi to frame that constitution. Now, the constituent assembly was also framed, and he said we have to create a constitution which incorporates the culture of our people, which incorporates the beliefs of our people, which incorporates the wisdom of our people, and which functions according to functions to fulfill the aspirations of our country. And every country has its own uniqueness, and India is the longest civilization, and therefore this kind of a country which has been democratic in spirit, we have been so democratic in spirit that democracy should reflect in our constitution as well. And because he was in favor of creating a constitution which was democratic in spirit, created by the people of India, and that is why we see that even in the aims and objectives of the resolution that was put forth by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, even in that we realize it begins with the phrase which became the preamble of India, we the people of India, meaning to say it is not A, B or C who is making the constitution. It is the representatives of the entire people. They are not doing it in their individual capacity. They are doing it as representatives of the people, and therefore it is actually through the representatives, the people of India, who are framing the constitution. So the very preamble of the constitution, you will see, mirrors the ideals and the objectives which Gandhi stood for throughout his life. He says, now the basic things that we the people of India, of course, and he talks about what? He talks about liberty, justice, equality. Now these ideals of liberty, equality and justice, these were ideals that every Indian was aspiring for, and Gandhi led several kinds of movements and agitations and various kinds of petitions where he tried to achieve this for the country along with the people of the country. So we see that in the preamble itself, this is a unique constitution of the world where we talk of individual dignity and collective good in the same spirit, in the same vein. व्यक्ति की गरिमा, राष्ट्रीय एकता, ये दोनों का समागम एक स्वर में होना, ये बहुत ही विलक्षण योगदान है भारतीय संविधान का. और यही सामुदायिक हित की बात करना, पर व्यक्ति की गरिमा से समझौता नहीं करना, ये जो एक भारत के संविधान की एक विलक्षण जिसको हम कहते हैं योगदान है मानव सभ्यता के प्रति, that is something, because if you see, by and large, you will, if there is an individualistic tenor of a constitution, the collective good does not remain equivalent. But here is a constitution where you find that individual dignity, where the individual's liberty is also taken care of, is to be provided for. Equality is also to be provided for. Justice is also to be provided for. And in no means, and neither on the basis of place of birth, sex, caste, or whether it's educational qualification or anything else, wealth, nothing. Every individual shall remain equal. Now, this is a concept which a country which was colonized for so long has not forgotten, that we are a nation which had a culture which promoted equality, and we learned to respect each other all along. So this respect for each other, irrespective of the religious orientation, this respect for each other without any kind of condemnation or any kind of looking down upon people of the other, any other religion, this respect for all religions, which we call Sarv Dharm Sambhav, which has in some way been misrepresented, and there is a lot of confusion around the term secularism, which does not connote the same thing which is connoted in the West. We have a different connotation altogether, because we cannot become anti-religion or irreligion. And for us, dharma is not religion. I do not want to enter into that terrain, because that is an entire, a subject for a complete many hours discussion and deliberation. But I just want to point out that we have to remember that this respect for all religions, which even if we accept for the time being some kind of a connotation of secularism where we do not discriminate between religions, if we limit ourselves even to that, that has been something very inherent in our Indian culture. And therefore, this inherent cultural notion of ours, this inherent cultural practice of ours finds resonance in our constitution, because Gandhi was one person who struggled all his life for communal harmony. He struggled all his life for the removal of untouchability. और आप देखिए कि पार्ट 3 of the constitution, जहां फंडामेंटल राइट्स की बात की गई है, मौलिक अधिकारों की बात की गई है, उन मौलिक अधिकारों में भी अस्पृश्यता निवारण को इतनी प्राथमिकता प्रदान करना और समाज में समानता की स्थिति को उत्पन्न करना, ये this kind of removal of untouchability and making endeavors to create equality with one stroke and saying that this shall be a punishable offense. Friends, you have to remember, countries which became so-called democratic, attained democratic fruition since 1787 itself, we are still struggling to conquer the inherent spirit of racism which finds prevalence in different pockets of the country. So we may have, as of now, some aspects here and there where we find that untouchability may have persisted, but you do know that it is against the constitution. It's a punishable offense, and this kind of a punishable offense being incorporated into the constitution, what else can it be than a resonance of the Gandhian spirit? But when we talk of the Gandhian spirit, I must bring into focus that Gandhi had a different kind of a political setup in mind. And most of you, Gandhi is one person who's most read, most interpreted, and I don't think there is any person across the world जिसके बारे में इतना साहित्य सृजित किया गया हो, जो उन्होंने कहा और नहीं भी कहा, जो उन्होंने लिखा और नहीं भी लिखा, पर हर व्यक्ति की अपनी अपनी प्रकार की व्याख्या होती है, उसमें लोगों ने किया. But what we have to understand that Gandhi was a person who was very, very focused towards social and economic revolution. Social and economic जो progress है, आप और हम जानते हैं कि उन्होंने तो ये तक कहना शुरू कर दिया कि अब स्वतंत्रता प्राप्ति हो गई है, तय हो गया है, अब कांग्रेस को, अब इसको विरोधी दलों ने खूब भुनाया है, उसकी खूब चर्चा भी होती है कि कांग्रेस should dissolve itself, disband itself, and actually what he meant was it should transform itself into a Lok Sevak Sangh and should work for the economic and social amelioration of the masses. Now, this kind of social and economic amelioration we should understand that Gandhi had a different perspective altogether. And that different perspective was that village republics, उनका जो पूरा राजनीतिक प्रतिमान था, वो राजनीतिक प्रतिमान ग्रामों पर केंद्रित, ग्रामों पर आधारित, जिसमें स्वायत्त ग्राम होंगे, स्वशासित ग्राम होंगे, और elections would be conducted only at the village level, direct elections. And one more aspect before I forget when we talk of elections, the aspect of adult suffrage. That is again one aspect which Gandhi harped upon. And that adult suffrage has been, see, this is a very big achievement of the Indian people, that there are constitutions, there are countries which are still struggling. Only in the very late 70s and 80s that we find that many of the countries had been able to create universal adult franchise. Our country with one stroke created universal adult franchise, and major credit has to be, of course, the people of the country. After all, let me clarify that Gandhi represented the basic culture of India. और वो जो अंतर्निहित भारतीय संस्कृति का प्रतिनिधित्व गांधी करते थे, इसीलिए जब हम कहते हैं कि गांधी ने भारतीय देशज ज्ञान का प्रतिनिधित्व किया, तो वो देशज ज्ञान का प्रतिनिधित्व करना ये इस बात का द्योतक है कि गांधी वस्तुतः भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा और भारतीय रीति नीति, भारतीय संस्कृति में बहुत विश्वास रखते थे। तथापि उस संस्कृति में अगर कोई विकृतियां उत्पन्न हो गई हैं, कोई ऐसी मैल प्रैक्टिसेस ओरिजिनेट कर गई हैं, he never hesitated in struggling against them and removing them, whether it was untouchability, whether it was a bias against women not being given prominence in the public arena, and whether it was any kind of communal disharmony which was being created. These were things which were in contradiction to the basic culture. Therefore, what I'm trying to tell you is that Gandhi represented Indian culture, Indian values, Indian beliefs, and these are the Indian values, etc., which find manifestation in Gandhian spoken and written word. And that is why certain things which he said at that particular point of time were very in consonance with what was prevailing at that time, but which did not find favor in the Constituent Assembly later on. कि गांधी जी ने कोई स्वयं द्वारा वो हिंद स्वराज में उन्होंने अपनी सारी बात वहां वो दैट्स द मैग्ना कार्टा ऑफ Gandhian philosophy of rights and duties and political, social, economic model that he wanted to create. But beyond that, he never got the time. He was so preoccupied with other things कि वो अपने तरफ से कोई बहुत बड़ा भारत के लिए संभावित संविधान का निर्माण करके प्रस्तुत करते. But Shriman Narayan, who was a principal of Commerce College of Wardha, he wrote a constitution based on the speeches and writings of Gandhi, and then he submitted it, a 60-page volume, and he submitted it to Gandhi and said, Gandhi ji, this is what I have perceived what you would like a constitution to be. And Gandhi ji read that and he said, yes, largely it is in agreement and it almost represents my views there, but I did not find time to do that. But don't think that I have written it completely, but yes, in some way or the other, it kinds of mirrors my expectations or my designs for framing a constitution. उसमें गांधी ने, और वैसे भी मौखिक रूप से भी जब अवसर मिला तो वो अपने स्वर को बहुत प्रखर करते थे कि भविष्य का भारत का जो सुनहरा प्रतिफल अगर हम देखना चाहते हैं तो हमें सेल्फ सफिशिएंट, सेल्फ एडमिनिस्टर्ड विलेज रिपब्लिक्स पर आधारित एक व्यवस्था का निर्माण करें, और उस व्यवस्था में पंचायत की प्राथमिकता होगी, एडल्ट सफरेज से वहां इलेक्शन होगा, फिर उनके जो लीडर्स हैं वो तालुक लेवल पर होंगे, एंड तालुक लेवल से प्रोविंशियल लेवल पर, एंड देन दे विल इलेक्ट द सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेचर व्हिच विल हैव वेरी फ्यू बिसाइड्स द फॉरेन रिलेशंस वगैरह, उसके अतिरिक्त नहीं होगा. बट आई जस्ट वांट टू टेल यू दैट व्हाई आई एम रेजिंग दिस इशू इज these issues were not taken into cognizance and were completely rejected by the Constituent Assembly when they began framing the Constitution. That is why we had two models, either the Gandhian model or based on the village republics, or the Euro-American model, which had the parliamentary system of government, which had these modern institutions, which we had become accustomed to for the past several years, decades, and more than a century. And so, therefore, what the Constituent Assembly at that point of time thought in its good sense to adopt the Euro-American model, where we adopted the parliamentary system akin to the British system, but with a combination of the federal system of America. So these combinations then saw that the village republic system, which Gandhi had propagated or propounded, that was not accepted at that point of time. It was only after a couple of months, a couple of weeks, that Rajendra Prasad ji realized कि गांधी जी के उस ग्रामीण व्यवस्था का और ग्राम केंद्रित जो व्यवस्था है उसका तो हम लोगों ने ध्यान नहीं दिया. Then he raised this issue in the Constituent Assembly, and when he raised this issue in the Constituent Assembly, then B.N. Rao ji outrightly rejected it. One, he said that it is completely in contradiction to what we have done, and now it has that aims and objectives resolution has already been decided. We have signed it. It has, and that draft constitution, the draft constitution has been already being considered for examination and consideration and whatever. So this cannot fit in. And as you all know, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was also strongly critical of this village-based republic system, where he and Gandhi had complete difference of ideas on this system, because he considered villages, if Ambedkar ji considered the villages as dens of localism, of conservatism, of orthodoxy, of backwardness, Gandhi considered them to be the seeds of progress, where if functioned according to the true spirit of the Indian culture, these villages could flower into a system and help create a system, would become very self-reliant. And what today's Prime Minister says, Atmanirbhar Bharat, he conceived and perceived of India which was based on villages, but we rejected that. But then, when, as I said, whether it is the fundamental rights, if you go into the fundamental rights of India, you will see that most of, in part 3, right to liberty, equality, fraternity, or justice, whether it is, where you have this right to contest anything done and which is justiciable, you go to court. These rights have been given and has that resonance of and reverberation of Gandhian spirit. But more than that, in part 4 of the Constitution, where the directive principles of state policy have been dealt, these are non-justiciable. But when this was being dealt, that is the time when people raised this issue. Whether it was Mahavir Tyagi ji, he also raised this issue. There were other luminaries of that Constituent Assembly, the names of which I forget as of now, but they raised those issues and they tried to bring into the Shibban Lal Saxena ji, Qazi Sayyid Karimuddin ji, all of them raised these issues that we have to also take into consideration the proposal of Gandhi ji. And then that was the time that if you see in the Constitution of India, Part 4 of the Constitution, Directive Principles of State Policy, whether it is promoting village panchayat system, that has been incorporated. कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री को प्रमोट करने की, कुटीर उद्योगों को प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए राज्य कार्य करेगा. Remember, dear friends, Gandhi was one person who believed in the positive obligations of the state, not the negative restrictions of the state. He was one person who believed in the positive obligations, whether it is and these are non-justiciable rights. So he did not want to say, like John Stuart Mill, he was a reluctant Democrat. He did not believe too much in these power of state. He was not a very strong votary of the power of state, but he realized that the state has to play a role. The minimum it plays, the better it is, the more autonomous society is, the better it is. And we have to create a system where we grow more self-sufficient without the intervention of the state as much as possible, but whenever and wherever needed. It should not be a negative restriction of state authority, but it should be a positive prescription for state authority. And that is the time when he says these positive prescriptions would mean that the state should endeavor to promote cottage industries in the country, in the villages. The state should endeavor to to ensure that prohibition, अब आप समझें कि prohibition को अगर वो कह रहे हैं जहां intoxicant drinks and drugs the state should ensure that unless and until for medicinal value and reasons, these things should try to be prohibited, which we see some states are experimenting with. How successful they are, that's a different story altogether. But nonetheless, because he felt that, succumbing to the habit of liquor, getting addicted to liquor, consuming liquor in the manner it was being consumed was a deadly sin. And therefore he felt this kind of deadly sin should be done away with, and state should also take positive steps in doing that. Not only that, other than prohibition, even for women, special provisions for women and special provisions for children. Even when it comes to education, he talks of how primary and how education should be compulsory and free for children, and how they should be taught through handicrafts. These non-justiciable rights that we talk of in the directive principles of state policy, many strong critics of Gandhi say कि साहब ये तो एक प्रकार से गांधी जी को कहीं एक स्थान दे देने का एक consolation prize है. We have to remember that now with the Keshwanand Bharti case, when it has been said that the constitution can be amended, but the amending power of the parliament will not change the basic structure of the constitution. And not only the basic structure of the constitution, if you also remember that long struggle between the parliament and the judiciary, where it was decided that if the judiciary was all the time protecting the rights of the individuals, because it was supposed to be the custodian of the rights of the individuals and interpreter of the constitution, though living in their ivory towers, the judicial process was such that the judges most largely tried to protect individual rights. And that was the time when parliament raised a hue and cry, and it was a long battle when the parliament said, these are positive prescriptions for us, directive principles of state policy. So when it comes to protection of right versus the common good of collective good of the people, we have to take into cognizance the collective good of people. And we do know that then non-justiciable, it may have acquired that connotation, but as of now we see that those positive prescriptions enshrined in the Constitution of India have gained more prominence as of date, and even the states and the judiciary also does not lag behind in trying to remind the states that these are also certain duties that have to be performed by the Constitution, by the Parliament and the executive. Therefore, they have also gained prominence in the functioning of the constitutional institutions of India. So if we see whether even an issue which was very close to the heart of Mahatma Gandhi, and that was banning of cow slaughter, even a subject like that has been included in the Constitution of India, in the directive principles of state policy. Milch and draught cattle, they should be protected, not because there was vociferous, dissent regarding from different sections of society which had different religious orientations, saying that no, because they believed they did not hesitate in having beef and they were against it. Then a consensus was arrived at that these are cattle which had economic value, which had a lot of value to contribute, because India was an agrarian country, and they had their own economic value. Even for agriculture, their value cannot be disputed, and therefore the state shall endeavor to prohibit cow slaughter and milch and draught cattle. This was incorporated into the constitution, and there can be arguments about it. There have been lengthy debates. There have been, contradictory views on that. But all said and done, these subjects, which were very close to the heart of Mahatma Gandhi, where he had raised a lot of issues concerning that, and especially when it came to the distinctions of caste, and where he says that in the fundamental rights itself, it is said that whether it is the public wells, there are restaurants, or whether it is, public entertainment areas, no place should be prohibited entry, and access cannot be prohibited to anyone on the basis of birth or caste or whatever. And these are issues, whether we go into the third part of the constitution, when it comes to fundamental rights, and we go into the fourth part of the directive principles of state policy, we will see that Gandhi finds a lot of resonance over there, a lot of importance has been given to him. And when it comes to even elections and franchise, that is also one aspect where he has been given cognizance. And I just have, I think, one more minute. I'll take one more minute and I'll conclude, Satyakamji, that now that we talk of international peace, Gandhi was an apostle of non-violence. आज भी अगर यूक्रेन और रशिया के युद्ध के संदर्भ में भिन्न भिन्न मत उभर कर आ रहे हैं, और ऐसे में किसी एक का साथ देना और नहीं देना, इसके आक्षेप और आरोप और प्रत्यारोप लग रहे हैं, लेकिन ऐसे में भी अगर देश के प्रधानमंत्री कहते हैं कि ये युद्ध का काल नहीं है, युद्ध नहीं होना चाहिए, ये वस्तुतः उस गांधीय या भारतीय उस जो संस्कृति है उसका प्रतिबिंबन है कि हम शांति में विश्वास करते हैं, हम शांति के दूत हैं। और चाहे वो कोविड हुआ, उसमें भी जो हमने सहयोग किया और वसुधैव कुटुंबकम के उस अवधारणा को हम अपने व्यवहार में परिलक्षित किया, ये सभी भारतीय संस्कृति के को प्रतिबिंबित भी करते हैं। और गांधी भारतीय संस्कृति का इससे बेहतर जीता जागता उदाहरण उस वक्त जो गांधी थे और आज भी हमारे लिए रखते हैं कि अगर आज आपको स्वच्छता अभियान करना है तो गांधी को स्मरण करके करना है, अगर महिलाओं को विशेष अधिकार प्रदान करके उनको समुन्नत करना है तो हम गांधी को स्मरण करते हैं, अगर हम बच्चों को विशेष अधिकार और उनको किसी भी हानिकारक व्यवसाय में ना लगा सकें और उसमें के लिए अगर हम सक्रिय होते हैं तो ये गांधी दर्शन का प्रतिबिंबन है। तो मैं ये इस बात के साथ अपनी वाणी को विराम दूंगी कि संभवतः हमने प्रत्यक्षतः गांधी के उस राजनीतिक पूरे प्रतिबिंब को वहां नहीं या प्रतिमान को वहां परिलक्षित नहीं किया अपने संविधान में, लेकिन गांधी के चिंतन के स्वर, उनकी उस जो हम कहते हैं ना आत्मिक स्वर, हमारे संविधान के प्रावधानों में न केवल मुखर होते हैं बल्कि आज भी अगर भारत का संविधान और राजनीतिक व्यवस्था इस स्टेज पर पहुंच गया कि हम अपने अमृत महोत्सव के रूप में उसको सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं, तो भाइयों और बहनों हमें गांधी के प्रति अपनी श्रद्धा व्यक्त करनी चाहिए, या कम से कम आर इंडेटेडनेस, हैड इट नॉट बीन फॉर हिम probably we definitely would have gained independence, but that independence and our journey would definitely have been different from what we have acquired till now and achieved till now. Thank you all for a patient hearing. Paucity of time prevents me from elaborating on many issues that I would have loved to elaborate, but I was told that you are supposed to speak for 40 minutes. And I probably have exceeded that. But nonetheless, thank you, Satyakamji, and all of you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and do some loud speaking. Thank you.
धन्यवाद इंदिरा जी। आपका पूरा व्याख्यान सुन के मैं अभिभूत तो हूँ ही, और जितना मैं आपको जानता हूँ आज इससे भी ज्यादा आपको जाना है। और दिनकर की 2 पंक्तियां मैं आपको सुनाना चाहता हूं कि गांधी बुद्ध अशोक नाम है बड़े दिव्य स्वप्नों के, और भारत स्वयं मनुष्य जाति की बहुत बड़ी कविता है। तो ये सार है आपके पूरे व्याख्यान का। और आम तौर पर हमारे मन में, और जो पॉलिटिकल साइंस के विद्यार्थी भी हैं, इतिहास के, सोशल साइंसेज और ह्यूमैनिटीज, या जो भी विद्यार्थी है, उनके मन में ये बात रहती है कि संविधान की जो निर्मिति है, उस संविधान निर्मिति में जो मुख्य धुरी है बाबा साहब है, और इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है, उसको कहीं भी कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट नहीं किया जा सकता। लेकिन जिस तरह से प्रोफेसर शीला राय जी ने प्रत्यक्ष रूप में और परोक्ष रूप में, प्रत्यक्ष रूप में और परोक्ष रूप में, जिस तरह से महात्मा गांधी का प्रभाव, सर मैं बाद में बात करता हूं, प्रत्यक्ष रूप में और परोक्ष रूप में, जिस तरह से महात्मा गांधी का प्रभाव भारतीय संविधान में है, और खासतौर पर जिस तरह से नीति निर्देशक तत्वों का, डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स का हवाला देते हुए शीला राय जी ने कहा, ग्राम स्वराज की बात की, ग्राम गणतंत्र की बात की, कुटीर उद्योग की बात की, पंचायतों की बात की, वयस्क मताधिकार की बात की, भारतीय संस्कृति और देशज ज्ञान की बात की। ये सब मिलके एक भारतीय संहिता बनती है। और ये जो भारतीय संहिता बनती है, उसको समझने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि एक जब हम एक श्रृंखला में बात कर रहे थे, उसमें जनगण मन और वंदे मातरम को लेकर भी बात आई थी। उस पर भी काफी विस्तार से बात आई। जो बात शीला राय जी ने कही, वही बात उस वक्ता ने भी कही थी कि जो पश्चिम का प्रभाव है और जो अपना देशज प्रभाव है, उसका जो द्वंद्व था, उसके द्वंद्व से न उस समय हम मुक्त थे, न आज हम उससे मुक्त हैं। हम कहीं ना कहीं दोनों के बीच में हमारा जो भारत का जहाज है, और शीला जी इस पर ज्यादा बताएंगी कि हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो लिखा हुआ है, ये कब हटेगा, इंडिया दैट इज भारत, ये कब हटेगा, मैं उसका इंतजार कर रहा हूं। कि सब देश को एक नाम से जानते हैं, हमारे देश को इंडिया और भारत से भी जानते हैं। ये इसके लिए हम लोगों को प्रयास करना पड़ेगा। और मैं, चूंकि शीला जी लगातार समाज के बीच रहती हैं और बुद्धिजीवियों के बीच में रहती हैं, और इनकी बातों को लोग सुनते हैं, समझते हैं, ध्यान देते हैं, तो मैं ये बात कई जगह कर चुका हूं कि कब वो दिन आएगा, और ये इससे अच्छा समय अभी नहीं हो सकता है कि हम ये कहें कि हम भारत हैं। तो ये जो भारतीयता के प्रतीक के रूप में हम संविधान को, जो हमारे लिए सब कुछ है, गीता है हमारे लिए, और हम इसकी केवल पूजा ही नहीं करते हैं, बल्कि इसके कर्मों का अनुसरण भी करते हैं। तो आज जो मैंने एक ऐसा लग रहा था कि मैं एक उद्बोधन नहीं सुन रहा हूं, बल्कि एक विचार जिस फ्लो में आ रहा है, वो एक कविता के रूप में विचार हमारे सामने आ रहा है। ये बात भी प्रमाणित करता है कि शीला जी कितनी अच्छी अध्यापिका है, कि उन्होंने बिल्कुल सभी चीजों को बहुत ही स्पष्ट ढंग से बताया। और इस पर भी हम आपसे व्याख्यान कराएंगे कि धर्म रिलीजन क्यों नहीं है और रिलीजन धर्म क्यों नहीं है। इस पर हम व्याख्यान कराएंगे, और आपको मैं विश्वास दिलाता हूं, इस बार ऑनलाइन नहीं होगा, इस बार आप हमारे विश्वविद्यालय में आएंगी, हमारे कुलपति महोदय भी रहेंगे। हमारे कुलपति महोदय लगातार, उन्हीं की प्रेरणा से ये पूरा का पूरा कार्यक्रम संचालित हो रहा है। जब मैंने पहली बार उनसे जाके कहा कि सर प्रधानमंत्री जी का आह्वान है और 75 वर्ष का मसला है, तो मैं 75 व्याख्यान कराना चाहता हूँ। उन्होंने मेरी एक बार देखा और देख के कहा हाँ कर लो। और उसके बाद कोरोना का भी समय था, बहुत मुश्किलों का भी समय था। और मैं बताना चाहता हूं शीला जी कि जो मेरा पहला जो वक्तव्य था वो चंपारण सत्याग्रह पर था। और चंपारण सत्याग्रह में उसमें जो एक बात बताई थी प्रोफेसर अशोक कुमार ने, जो बिहार विश्वविद्यालय में जो शिक्षक है, अध्यापक है, प्रोफेसर है, उन्होंने बताया था कि गांधी जी को भोजपुरी तो आती ही नहीं थी, वो तो कैसे भी हिंदी सीखी थी उन्होंने। तो जब गए तो राजेंद्र बाबू उनके इंटरप्रेटर बने, क्योंकि मोतिहारी और उसके पास चंपारण के आसपास भोजपुरी बोली जाती। तो ये बात कौनती है कि देखिए गांधी जी कैसे बिहार चले गए, चंपारण चले गए, एक किसान के बुलावे पर चले गए। और अगर शीला जी जो बात बता रही थी, अगर भारतीय संविधान में गांधी जी के विचारों का प्रभुत्व होता तो हमारा देश में दूसरा होता। जैसे प्रेमचंद ने कहा था ना कि जॉन के हाथ से अगर गोविंद के हाथ में सत्ता चली गई तो कोई फर्क तो पड़ता नहीं। फर्क पड़ता है जब किसानों और मजदूरों के हाथ में सत्ता जाए। तो बहुत अच्छा, मैंने हमारे जितने भी व्याख्यान हुए हैं उसमें से कुछ व्याख्यानों में इसको मैं रेखांकित कर सकता हूं। बहुत ही सुंदर, बहुत ही बेहतर, और आज की संख्या भी बहुत अच्छी रही, जो प्रत्यक्ष संख्या है। और मुझे लगता है कि और सभी क्षेत्रीय निदेशकों और निर्देशकों से अनुरोध है कि अब हम 75वीं सीढ़ी पर चल रहे हैं। आप लोग का जैसा सहयोग मिलता है, मिलता रहेगा, और फिर हम लोग आपस में मिलेंगे। तो मैं ये अनुरोध करता हूं कि समय हो रहा है हम लोगों का, तो हम लोग राष्ट्रगान के लिए प्रस्तुत हों। संजय जी, राष्ट्रगान।
मन अधिनायक कर है भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उत्कल जलधि तरंगा, तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
सबको धन्यवाद। अब फिर अगली सूचना तक आप लोग इंतजार करें। हम लोग फिर मिलेंगे, वर्चुअली भी मिल सकते हैं और कैंपस में भी मिल सकते हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद शीला जी को।
थैंक यू सत्यकाम जी, कंग्रेचुलेशंस कि आपने ये इतना बड़ा जो आपने एम्बिशन रखा और उसको पूरा कर लिया। प्रॉमिसेस होते हैं लेकिन सब उसको संभव नहीं कर पाते हैं, तो इसलिए बहुत बहुत बधाई।
थैंक्स मैम, वेरी वेरी एनलाइटेंड लेक्चर।
थैंक यू सो मच। एंड जस्ट वन स्मॉल रिजॉइंडर सत्यकाम जी, वो जो हम भारत, वी इंडिया दैट इज भारत, मैं इंडिया पॉलिसी की चेयरपर्सन हूँ एंड वी हैव रिजॉल्व्ड इट विल नो लॉन्गर बी इंडिया पॉलिसी फाउंडेशन। हमने उसके लिए भेज दिया है सोसाइटी में, रजिस्ट्रेशन सोसाइटी में रजिस्ट्रार के पास, इट शैल बी ओनली भारत पॉलिसी फाउंडेशन। सो वी हैव टू बिगिन स्मॉल लिटिल स्टेप्स।
बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत
थैंक यू, बहुत बढ़िया।